Hi everyone, this is Kalyan Kumar and welcome once again to Chemistry Universe. In the last video, which was the beginning of alkyl halides, part 1, we talked about the nature of solvents, the kind of solvents that you have, the various types of solvents, and the role that they play to a limited extent towards a reaction. We also looked into the kinetic aspect of reactions. We talked about what is the meaning of a transition state, even though we had done transition state quite in detail when we talked about GOC. And we talked about what is activation energy. We talked about how is the rate of a reaction dependent on the concentration of various reactants. And we also talked about the concept of activation energy, the minimum energy required by a reactant to turn into a product from the point of view of rate of a reaction. In this video, which is part 2, we are going to deal with the thermodynamic and kinetic control of a reaction and various types of electrophiles and nucleophiles. So let's get on with the show and start part 2 of alkyl halides. Now, thermodynamic and kinetic control. So let's start with that. Now, many reactions produce more than one product. Now, before I jump into this, let me make sense of this line. Now, when I say many reactions produce more than one product, you might feel that if there is a reaction, let's say CaCO3 giving CaO and CO2, so you might say that, okay, CaCO3 is producing CaO and CO2, there are two products. No, I'm not talking about these two products. I'm basically talking about different types of products a reaction is capable of producing by varying mechanisms. So a single reactant can produce more than one type of product depending on the pathway it goes through. So if it goes through pathway 1, it produces one product. When it goes to pathway 2, it produces another product. Whereas in the case of CaCO3 giving CaO plus CO2, both are produced in the same pathway. So whatever pathway produces CaO, the same pathway generates CO2 as a side product. So when I talk about the reaction producing two types of products or three types of products, it is based on the fact that they are produced by different pathways. So let's get deep into it and understand what is the meaning of thermodynamic and kinetic control. Now, which product will form more depends on primarily two factors. One is the relative stability of the product, which is called the thermodynamic factor. And the third is the rate of formation of each product, which is called the kinetic factor. So there are basically two factors involved in this. One is the stability of the products themselves. So which is more stable, which is less stable. And the second factor that controls it is which is formed faster and which is formed slower. And it is not necessary that the more stable one will always be produced faster. So if a reaction is controlled by thermodynamics, then the most stable product is formed as the major product. While if a reaction is controlled by kinetics, then that product is formed in major amount, which has the lower activation energy. Again, let's understand that. So if you have a reaction in which the product is governed by stability, then the thermodynamic controlled product will be the major product. Now you might wonder, wouldn't all reactions follow that? You'll come to know they don't. Not all of them follow that. And if a reaction's product is controlled by the speed, then the one which has the lower activation energy or the larger rate will form in greater amount. Now at low temperature, the product that requires less activation is major, while the one that requires higher activation energy cannot form since the temperature cannot provide the higher value of activation energy. At higher temperatures though, both products can form as the temperature can give sufficient activation energy for both, and in such a case the most stable product would be major. So at high temperature the thermodynamic control product is major, while at lower temperatures it is the kinetic control product which is major. Now let's understand this. What I mean by this here is that when a reaction is happening and it is happening at a lower temperature. Now lower temperature means less energy is being given to the reactants. And if one product requires high activation energy and one requires low activation energy, then at lower temperatures, the one which requires lower activation energy can form, whereas the one that requires higher activation energy cannot form because the temperature is not sufficient enough to give the reactants that much energy. While at higher temperatures, both can form. Because now at higher temperatures, even the one with a higher activation energy can form. And when it comes to knowing which is major at high temperatures, generally, again, depending on the nature of the reaction, which I will talk in detail now, generally, the thermodynamically controlled product is formed as major amount in the case of higher temperatures. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is various scenarios, various cases where both reactions are irreversible. So both are irreversible. So let's look at the reaction profile. This energy, remember, is a free energy, and it's going like this, and one reactant and one product is formed. In fact, this is not free energy. This could be the total energy perhaps, because if it were free energy, then the X would also have to be less than the reactant. So let's say this is the total energy of the reactants and product that is being shown. Now, here, if you look at the blue line, it requires lower activation energy. If you look at the red line, it requires higher activation energy. As you can see, the difference between the reactants and the transition state is low for the blue line. So if I were to look at this gap, this is lower than this gap. So the blue line requires lesser activation energy than the red line. In this scenario, product Y is thermodynamically more stable compared to X, so it is a thermodynamically controlled product. Moreover, the activation energy for the product Y is also lower than that of product X, so it is also a kinetic controlled product. So I think you can understand this pretty well, that the blue line, if you see, requires lower activation energy, and the product's energy is also lower in the case of the blue product. Whereas in the case of the red product, which is the X product, you will notice that the activation energy required is also higher, as well as it has less stability compared to the lower value Y, because it's higher in energy. So Y is a thermodynamically controlled product as well as a kinetic controlled product. So it is both. So in such an event, Y will be the major product irrespective of the temperature. That means at both temperatures, Y would be the major product. And it makes sense. At lower temperatures, you can get lower activation energy and Y will form in major amount. At higher temperature also, Y will be major, as it will anyway form faster than X, even though X can form. And Y being more stable, you will get more of Y than of X. Now, there is another possibility in this scenario where both reactions are irreversible, and that is this scenario, where the thermodynamic controlled product is not necessarily the kinetic controlled product. Now look at this and guess which has lower activation energy. Obviously, X has lower activation energy. But which is thermodynamically more stable? Obviously, Y. So can you see the kinetic controlled product is different from the thermodynamic controlled product? Now, what do you think will form at lower temperatures? Guess. Now, what will form at lower temperatures is the one that requires less activation energy, which is the red graph which is product X. So at low temperatures, the product with less activation energy will be the major one, that is X. Now at higher temperatures, Y will also start forming. At higher temperatures, both products can form as the temperature is high enough to provide the activation energy for the higher one, which is Y. But even then, you will realize that since both reactions are irreversible, they cannot go back. So it does make sense to understand that even at higher temperatures, X will be major, despite the fact that it is not stable. And that is because when you compare X and Y formation, the rate of X is anyway going to be higher than Y, even at higher temperatures, because X requires less activation energy. And if you remember, K increases as EA decreases, and K is the rate constant. So lower the EA, higher is the value of K, which implies that X will anyway form faster than Y. Now let us say that in 5 minutes, 4 mole of X get formed. And in the same 5 minutes, 1 mole of Y gets formed. That's because X has higher rate. So that means in a given time period, the amount of X will always be greater than Y, and since both reactions are irreversible, they will stay as it is. So if after a long time we were to find out which is larger in amount, the one obviously that formed faster would be more in amount. That means X. So despite the fact that Y is thermodynamically controlled, X is kinetically controlled, X should be major at both temperatures. But even at higher temperatures, the rate of formation of X will still be higher than that of Y, as it has lower value of EA. Now you might argue that, look, you just said that at lower temperatures, the kinetic control product is major, and at higher, the thermodynamic is more stable and it will form in major amount. So why is the discrepancy here? Well, we'll just wait for a little more while and you'll figure out why I said that. Alright, so let's go for the next part. So this implies that at both lower and higher temperatures, the major product will be X. Now let's consider a reaction where one reaction is reversible, the other is not. One reaction is reversible and the other is not. And of course, the third case would be both are reversible, which we'll do right after this. So let's take this. And now let's take this graph. Now, pay attention to the fact that I have not used the other graph. I have not used this graph. The reason is that we cannot estimate which has lower value of reverse activation energy. We do not know whether this value is lower or higher than this value, because even though this mountain is higher, this value is also higher. This mountain is lower and even this value is lower. So we will not be able to guess the reverse activation energy, and therefore we will not be able to guess which product is reversible, which is not. Whereas when you look at this particular example that I've shown you, you can clearly see that X, which is higher, has lower value of Ts, which means the activation energy for the reverse of red will be lower than the activation energy of the blue one. So reverse reaction can only happen in the case of X, whereas it cannot happen in the case of Y because it requires more EA. Now either both can be achieved, which means this is wrong, which means both are reversible. Right now we are not taking both are reversible. We are assuming only one is reversible and the other is irreversible. So if I were to give you an option of which is reversible and which is irreversible, you definitely pick X to be reversible and Y to be irreversible. So here X is reversible and Y is irreversible. In this situation, reversible reaction will be the formation of X as it has lower value of EA for the reverse reaction. Now at lower temperatures, the major product would be X as it has lower EA. So this we have already discussed. But the reaction would be in equilibrium. So it won't be reactant giving X only, it will be reactant in equilibrium with X, because remember, reaction of X is reversible. At higher temperatures though, Y will also start forming, but since that reaction is irreversible, Y will not turn back to the reactant. However, the formation of X will still be reversible. This means the formation of Y will continue to decrease the amount of the reactant, which will drive the backward reaction of the formation of X. Now try and understand this part. This is very crucial to understand. What you need to understand is that at higher temperatures, Y will start forming. But remember, Y is irreversible. So whatever Y forms doesn't go back to the reactant. But remember, X is always reversible. If it was reversible at lower temperatures, it will definitely be reversible at higher temperatures. Now at higher temperatures, if it is also again reversible, then what will happen is, whatever the amount of the reactant that is going to Y, that amount of the reactant will be formed by the reversibility of X based on the Le-Chatelet principle. According to the Le-Chatelet principle, if there is a reactant and a product and the reactant is withdrawn, the reaction will go back to form the reactant again. And in this case, the reactant is going to Y and it is not coming back from Y because Y is irreversible. And therefore, whatever reactant is consumed to form Y, that reactant will be compensated by the reverse reaction of X. But this will keep on happening. X will go to the reactant will go to Y, again reactant will decrease, X will go back to the reactant. Eventually, only Y will exist. So in this scenario, you can clearly see that even though at lower temperatures, X was major, the one which required lower activation energy, at higher temperatures, Y is major because Y is the one that is irreversible. Eventually, Y will be the major product at higher temperature. Now let's take the third case. The third case being both reactions are reversible. So again, I take the same example. But this case, we are going to assume both are reversible. Same graph, but now both are reversible. Now again at lower temperatures, the major product will be X because lower activation energy. At higher temperatures, Y will start forming, that we can understand now. Now both reactions will still be in equilibrium, but the reverse reaction of Y will be slower as it has greater reverse EA. As you can see, the reverse of Y will be slower than the reverse of X because the reverse of Y has greater EA. So if X turn backs to the reactant faster than Y does, which do you think will remain in major amount? So at higher temperature, both reactions remain in equilibrium, but the amount of Y will be greater than X. Hence, Y will be the major product at higher temperatures. Now, if details of reversibility and EA are not known, then by default we assume at lower temperature the major product is kinetic controlled product and at higher temperature the major is the thermodynamically controlled product. Which means that if we ever get a situation where we don't know about the EA, we don't know which is reversible, which is irreversible, and we have seen in two of the cases that at higher temperature the thermodynamic control product was major, at lower the kinetic control product was major. So by default, we will assume that it is one of these two cases if we don't know about the reversibility. If we know about the reversibility, then we do it accordingly. If we don't, this is the default assumption that we will have. So I'll give you an example where you have a thermodynamic control product and a kinetic control product, but one's activation energy is lower and the other is higher. For example, if you look at the tautomerism of this particular ketone, now if you remember, it has two alpha H, one on the left and one on the right. Now it can form a tautomer from both. Now if it forms a tautomer from both, this one, let us assume the blue one, as you can see here, let us assume it first forms from the right side. So it will have an anion like this, and its product would be this. This is the enol that will form with the right side. But if the alpha H from the left is taken, the first thing you must realize is that the carbon ion formed from the left one will be more stable than the carbon ion from the right one, because in the right one, in this particular carbon ion, there's a plus I effect of CH3 which is acting, and this plus I effect is going to decrease the stability of the anion. Whereas if the anion were to form on the left side, there is no plus I effect available to make it less stable, so that in fact is more stable. So the intermediate of this anion is more stable, and the transition state of this anion will be more stable. But if I ask you to guess which enol will be more stable, here the enol will form here. Obviously, you will know this enol has more hyperconjugation, whereas this enol does not have that much of hyperconjugation, and therefore this product will be less stable than this product. So what essentially happens is, the red graph is below, but the product is less stable. So this is the anion, and this is the product. So you see, in the blue case, the activation energy was higher, but the product is more stable. In the red case, the activation energy was lower and the product was unstable. So the blue product is the thermodynamic control product, and the red one is the kinetic control product. Now let's talk about electrophiles and nucleophiles, because this is another point that we need to understand here. So this entire topic is about electrophiles and nucleophiles, so we need to understand them. In fact, it's more about nucleophiles, not electrophiles, but we'll do both of them. Electrophiles are species that can accept electrons or accept electron-rich species like nucleophiles. So what it basically means is that in the case of electrophiles, they have somewhere some electron deficient center. It could be a complete positive charge, it could be without a positive charge, an empty orbital, or it could be a partially filled orbital or stuff like that. The fact of the matter is that it is capable of accepting either an electron pair or just getting an attack from a nucleophile. So that is what an electrophile is. Electrophiles can either take 1 or 2 electrons, so it doesn't matter how many electrons they take. Electrophiles are of various types. So the first are the positively charged ones, and as you can see, all of these are positively charged and they're all electrophiles. They're not just electrophiles because of the positive charge, they're electrophiles because they have unfilled orbital or orbitals, and they have either partially filled or completely empty orbitals. In species such as H3O plus and NH4 plus, the central atom does not act as electrophile. So in H3O plus, there is no electron deficiency as such, but they still behave as electrophiles because they are capable of giving H plus. And anything which is a source of electrophile is also considered an electrophile. But they can accept electrons and liberate hydrogen gas because of the fact that they can give H plus. So these species are electrophiles, but the electrophilic center is not the central atom but H plus. There are of course neutral electrophiles also. All species with incomplete octet are electrophiles because they need electrons to complete the octet. For example, radical. In the case of AlCl3, there is a complete empty orbital. BF3 has complete empty orbital. CCl2, a carbene, requires 2 electrons to complete the octet. We can even have species that can expand the octet. Now, there are some species which can expand the octet because they have d orbitals. So if they are d orbitals, they can accept electrons in the d orbital. So despite the fact that the octet is complete, they can expand their octet and act as electrophiles. So in the case of SiCl4, you have SiCl4 and 2Cl minus reacting to form SiCl6 2 minus. You have SiF4 and 2F minus to form SiF6 2 minus. You have PCl5 accepting Cl minus in its d orbital and forming PCl6 minus. And then you can also have species with multiple bonds acting as electrophiles. This, by the way, is 4. This is 4, number 4. The species having multiple bonds also act as electrophiles. So you have CH3CO CH3, and here the multiple bond must be attached to an electronegative element, and Cn minus can attack this carbon because this carbon is electrophilic because one is anyway O is pulling it, and secondly it is resonance stabilized by this structure. And this makes, and since this will also contribute to some extent to this structure, actually there is some kind of a delta plus on this carbon. So the Cn minus attacks this carbon and forms a species like this. So carbon here acted as an electrophile. And other examples of this type are RCOCl, acid halide, acid chloride in this case, and hydrides. They all have multiple bonds. Cyanide, you have SO2, you have CO2, they all have multiple bonds with a highly electronegative element. You have ketone, you have aldehyde, all of these. Now let's talk about nucleophiles. Pretty simple. Nucleophiles are species that can attack an electrophilic site, obviously, with a pair of electrons or with electron, and they can be even negatively charged. Many of them are negatively charged because they have a lone pair. More important is the presence of the lone pair, not negative charge. And of course, there are some species which have negative charge, no lone pair, but they're capable of giving a nucleophile, like BCl4 minus and PCl6 minus. The central atom does not act as a nucleophile, but they can give nucleophiles, so they can be considered as nucleophiles. But they can give Cl minus, which can act as a nucleophile, those they are considered as that. You can even have neutral nucleophiles, where you have lone pair but no charge. All of them have lone pairs, no charge. And species with multiple bonds, alkenes and aryl systems, they act as nucleophiles. So they have pi electron cloud above and below the plane of the alkene. There's a closed pi electron loop in benzene, and there is a good amount of pi electron cloud here also. In fact, of these two, the third one is going to be more nucleophilic because the lone pair on O can resonate with the pi bond, making the carbon negative, which makes it even a better nucleophile than the alkene and the benzene part. So that is the end of this part of alkyl halides, video number 2. And in this one, we talked about the thermodynamic and kinetic control products. We talked about electrophiles and nucleophiles. If you still have some issues in understanding these, or if you have some question that you haven't, that you feel that this has not answered, you can ask those in the comment section below. If you like this video, if you found it interesting and useful, do hit the thumbs up button and check out my channel, and you'll see other videos of other lessons. And I'm sure these will be useful to you. If they are, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for getting the latest updates whenever I upload a video. With that, this is Kalyan Kumar signing off. Have a great and wonderful day. Be safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.